When we think about the risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, it often feels like we're looking at a pile of scattered puzzle pieces.
Yeah, definitely. Like maybe it's genetics over here, maybe lifestyle there, maybe some specific health condition. They all seem separate.
Exactly. But what if those pieces aren't random at all? What if they're actually part of a predictable sequence, a precise pathway unfolding over time?
That's a really interesting thought.
Well, today we're diving deep into some groundbreaking new research. It's from UCLA Health, just published in eBiomedicine.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. It's really making waves.
It is. It's fundamentally reshaping how we understand Alzheimer's development. So our mission today is to unpack how these researchers did it. They used detailed electronic health records and, crucially, validated their findings with the diverse All of Us research program.
That validation is key, isn't it? Making sure it applies broadly.
Absolutely. And what they found weren't just single risk factors, but these sophisticated sequential diagnostic patterns, multi-step trajectories leading to Alzheimer's.
Right, so it really shifts the focus. It's not just what might contribute, but understanding the actual pathways the disease takes in the body.
Precisely. We're talking about progressive patterns, almost like a cascade of events.
Yeah.
Not just isolated incidents.
Which is quite different from how things were often looked at before.
Right. For so long, studies on Alzheimer's risk tended to focus on individual factors. One condition, maybe one gene, one lifestyle choice.
Yeah, like zooming in on just one tree and kind of missing the forest view.
Exactly. So how does this new research fundamentally change that perspective?
Well, that's the core of it. It introduces this fundamental paradigm shift. Instead of just identifying those single trees, they tracked how various diagnoses appeared in sequence,
Okay.
highlighting these step-by-step progressions. The first author, Mingzu Fu, he's a pre-doctoral student at UCLA, put it really well.
What did he say?
He said, "We found that multi-step trajectories can indicate greater risk factors for Alzheimer's disease than single conditions."
So the sequence itself carries more weight.
Exactly. And he added, "Understanding these pathways could fundamentally change how we approach early detection and prevention." That's a really powerful statement about the potential impact here.
Fundamentally changed. Yeah, that's big promise. And it seems the research delivers by identifying not just one path, but 4 distinct major trajectory clusters.
That's right, 4 main routes.
Can you walk us through those? What defines each specific route?
Absolutely. It shows how complex it can be, but still, there are these identifiable patterns. So first, there's what they call the mental health pathway.
Okay.
This involves psychiatric conditions which, down the line, seem to lead towards cognitive decline.
Makes sense.
Second is the encephalopathy pathway. This covers various conditions where brain function is impaired, things like certain types of brain inflammation or damage. And unfortunately, these tend to escalate over time.
Right, a direct brain issue pathway.
Then number 3 is maybe more what people might expect. The mild cognitive impairment pathway. Basically, a gradual progression of cognitive decline itself.
The MCI route.
And finally, the 4th is the vascular disease pathway. This highlights how cardiovascular conditions, heart issues, blood pressure contribute to dementia risk.
So 4 distinct starting points, or perhaps threads, leading toward the same outcome.
Pretty much. And what's really striking is that each pathway also showed unique demographic and clinical characteristics.
So different groups might be more vulnerable to specific pathways.
It suggests that, varied vulnerabilities across different populations.
So definitely not a one-size-fits-all disease development. It seems more like specific routes people might travel.
Exactly.
And what I find particularly compelling is the consistency you mentioned earlier, these sequential patterns. So these sequences aren't random then?
Not at all. That's a key finding. The study found that about 26%, roughly a quarter of these diagnostic progressions, showed consistent directional ordering.
A quarter is pretty significant.
It is. It's like a domino effect, but one that's surprisingly predictable in many cases.
Can you give us a concrete example? How does that domino effect play out?
Sure. So one example they observed was how hypertension, high blood pressure, often preceded episodes of depression.
Okay, hypertension first.
Then depression. And that specific combination, in that order, significantly increased the subsequent risk of Alzheimer's.
Wow. So it's not just having hypertension or having depression.
Right. It's the way they can occur together. in that particular sequence, forming a more potent pathway towards the disease.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and the lead author, Dr. Timothy Chang, he explicitly noted this. He said, recognizing these sequential patterns rather than focusing on diagnoses in isolation may help clinicians improve Alzheimer's disease diagnosis.
That makes perfect sense. It's not just if a factor is present, but when it appears in the timeline that elevates the risk. That really changes how we might screen for risk, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
So, okay, with these complex pathways identified, what's the immediate practical benefit? For patients, for clinicians? What's this so what here?
Well, the so what is huge, really. It matters immensely because these multi-step trajectories predicted Alzheimer's risk more accurately than just looking at single diagnoses alone.
More accurate prediction, that's big.
It is. And it means healthcare providers could potentially use these patterns in, I'd say, 3 key ways.
Okay, what are they?
First, for enhanced risk stratification. Basically, identifying those high-risk patients much earlier in the disease progression, maybe before major symptoms even appear.
They're getting ahead of it.
Exactly. Second, it allows for more targeted interventions. If you can see a harmful sequence starting to unfold,
You might be able to interrupt it.
precisely, interrupt that sequence before it advances further. And third, it really opens the door to truly personalized prevention.
Tailored strategies based on someone's specific pathway pattern.
You got it. And the fact that these findings held up in the All of Us research program is so important.
Right, you mentioned that earlier. Why is that specific program significant?
Because it's a huge, incredibly diverse, nationally representative group of people. So validating the findings there confirms these patterns aren't just, specific to one hospital system or one demographic. They seem to apply broadly.
Makes the findings much more robust and relevant for everyone.
Definitely.
Now, pulling all this together, mapping these complex sequences across thousands of people must have required some incredibly sophisticated work.
Oh, absolutely. The methodology is impressive.
Can you give us a sense of the scale of the data and the advanced methods they used?
Sure. Their robustness really comes from the massive data set they analyzed. They used medical data from the University of California Health Data Warehouse. We're talking nearly 25,000 patients overall.
Wow.
And specifically for the trajectory analysis, they focused on 5,762 patients who together contributed almost 6,800 unique Alzheimer's progression trajectories.
That's a lot of individual health journeys to map.
It really is. And to uncover these complex relationships over time, they use some advanced computational methods, things like dynamic time warping.
Dynamic time warping. What's that?
It sounds fancy, but it's actually perfect for this kind of work. It lets you compare sequences that might unfold at slightly different speeds, like one person's progression might be faster or slower than another's, but the underlying pattern could be the same. DTW helps find those matches even if they aren't perfectly aligned in time.
Okay, so it accounts for individual variation in timing.
Exactly. Alongside that, they used machine learning techniques to actually identify those recurring trajectory clusters, the 4 pathways we discussed, and also network analysis to map how different conditions connect to each other over time.
So this isn't just basic number crunching.
Not at all. It's applying really sophisticated computational power to tease out the hidden narrative, the sequential story, within vast amounts of health data.
That's incredible. So if there's one core insight, one big takeaway from this deep dive, it seems to be that Alzheimer's doesn't always just strike randomly out of the blue. It often unfolds along these specific, identifiable, multi-step pathways.
That's the essence of it, yes.
And that shift in understanding from thinking about isolated risk factors to seeing these sequential patterns, that feels truly monumental for the field.
It really is. This research holds profound potential. It could genuinely revolutionize early detection, how we assess risk.
And maybe even develop truly personalized prevention strategies.
Exactly. It allows us to potentially move beyond just waiting for symptoms to become obvious. Instead, we could proactively look for these early indicators appearing in sequence much earlier than we typically can now.
By getting a significant head start.
A huge head start.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If understanding disease progression as these trajectories, rather than just isolated events, is so powerful for Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
How might this kind of thinking apply to other chronic health conditions? Things like heart disease, diabetes, maybe even some autoimmune disorders.
That's a fascinating question.
Could there be other hidden sequential patterns just waiting to be discovered? And if we found them, how might that change our whole approach to wellness and intervention for really any long-term health challenge.
It opens up a whole new way of looking at chronic illness progression, doesn't it? Thinking about the sequence, the pathway, not just the individual data points.
Definitely something to chew on.